of Gin and Sin. It's Emily here this time presenting the case. I'm with Patty and Joe.
Hi!
Hey guys. And we're obviously recording via Zoom again because...
Lockdown.
Yeah, lockdown. So this week we're going to be talking about Dennis Nilsen, who, if you didn't know, is a Scottish serial killer. He was a necrophile as well, and he murdered at least 12 young men between 1978 and 1983 in London. And like, he is almost a bit like the British version of Jeffrey Dahmer. Almost, there's a lot. He didn't go as far as to be a cannibal, but a lot of the stuff he did was quite similar. Really, So we'll go straight in. Let's go for it.
Awesome.
So as I said, his killings span from 78 to 83, and he's one of the most prolific in Britain. So Dennis Nilsen was born in 1945 in the northeast of Scotland, in a place called Fraserburgh, in Aberdeenshire, which is quite a small place, from what I can gather, like a fishing town.
Oh, cool.
So he's the second of 3 children to Elizabeth White and Olav Moksheim, who adopted the name of Nielsen. So I'm not entirely sure why. Maybe.
Wait, so that wasn't their original surname?
No.
Maybe they didn't like either of their surnames, so when they get married, they just chose one.
Well, he was Norwegian, so maybe he was just sort of trying to lose the surname, maybe, and make it more anglicised, possibly. I don't know.
Maybe. True. It wouldn't be he wouldn't go for his wife's surname because that's not the thing done.
Not back then. Why would you do that? So he was a Norwegian fisherman who travelled to Scotland in 1940 following German occupation of Norway. And he married Elizabeth in 1942, so they pretty quickly got together. And apparently it was a difficult marriage. Olav didn't take it seriously and was away a lot and didn't really want to be at home or spend time with his wife. So I don't really know why he got married, but...
That's a great marriage. That is really strange. Maybe he thought it's a thing to do. Like to get married and stuff, but didn't actually want to.
Moved to a new country. Put down some roots, obviously, But they did divorce in 1948, so it didn't really last that long.
Oh my god, 6 years! That's nothing.
Especially back then to get divorced, it was a real big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah,
it wasn't.
It must have been really bad then.
Like people just stayed together even if they were miserable, but these guys didn't. So.
Yeah, and they had 3 kids. Good for them though. People weren't happy.
So the mother and siblings moved in with his maternal grandparents, with Nielsen's maternal grandparents, and Nielsen apparently adored his grandfather. They spent like pretty much all their time together when his grandfather was home. So he was a fisherman as well.
Yeah, I guess that's the father figure, isn't he?
It became his father figure. So they go on long walks around the harbour, across the beach, and up to like the sand dunes and stuff. They spent loads of time together. And Nielsen apparently described this stage of his life as the happiest. So it's all sort of downhill from. Yeah, it's nice, guys.
It's nice for that to be your highlight is a bit. The whole life. It's a bit sad. I guess those are the challenge.
So his grandfather he described as his great hero and protector, and said life was empty until he returned. So when he was away fishing, being a fisherman,
but they would have been away for a long time, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
I think fishermen go away for like months. They didn't come back for very long either. I don't think.
No.
But
so he just used to. I think he just was a very like lonely child and just used to just wait for his grandfather to come home all the time.
And he had siblings, so maybe they didn't get on.
No, I think they were.
And also, it's not the same though, is it? Like your siblings aren't going to be the same as what you consider to be potentially a father figure. No, I know. But to say he was lonely, but well, just because you're surrounded by people doesn't mean you're not lonely. No, I know that. But they were kids, I guess. Maybe they just didn't get on. It's fine.
Yeah, I don't think they did get on very well. I don't think he got on with many people. That was the issue.
Yeah. Oh, I guess. Okay. Fair enough.
So in 1951, his grandfather dies at sea of a heart attack, aged 62. So he wasn't very old.
No.
And Nielsen was only 6. Dennis was only 6.
Oh my god, so he didn't even have him for that long?
No, not at all. Really, really young. Yeah. So he comes home from school and his mother says, would you like to see your grandfather? So he's really excited because he didn't know his grandfather was coming home. Goes into the kitchen and he's dead on the table.
But she didn't tell him he died?
Didn't tell him he was dead or anything. No preparation. Just goes into the room and his grandfather is dead on the table.
Why would you scar a child like that? So that was the moment that he became a right? Is that what we're saying? Because that's ridiculous.
It's so that? And I know people were like really they didn't talk about stuff back then, but that's taking the piss, isn't it?
No, but I think she could have mentioned he's dead. I mean, your grandfather,
by the way, is dead.
He's in the other room. By the way, he's dead.
It's so scarring to anyone, especially a 6-year-old child. Like,
I mean, in the very least, you'd give him a choice whether he wants to see him or not.
Yeah.
And who knows, if he didn't, maybe it wouldn't be as bad. Maybe she didn't want to explain to him that he was dead and she was just going to do a show and tell. Just show. No tell. Just show.
Figure it out. So Dennis gazed upon the body while his mother told him he was sleeping and gone to a better place. So at least she's trying to sort of soften it there, I guess. But should have said that beforehand.
A bit late though, hun. Like, after the initial shock, yes. A little too late. Just too little.
Yeah.
And this one, sleeping, he's gone to a better place. Could have mentioned that before, Mum.
But this bit I find really sad. Dennis couldn't understand why his grandfather hadn't taken him with him to this better place.
Oh, that's really sad. But that's down to them not explaining it properly.
Yeah. So he feels abandoned as well.
Yeah, I feel like telling kids someone's gone to a better place is probably not, because if it's such a great place, why aren't we all there? Yeah, why isn't everyone going there? Yeah. It's not the right choice of words.
Kids, like, God's sake, just explain things.
Yeah, you don't have to. Sorry, people die. Yeah. Maybe a bit not like that, but basically like that. You don't have to tell them, like, probably when you die, there's nothing else. Like, probably that's it. You don't exist in any other form, but just say, oh, he's gone to a better place. It's just, well, you forgot his body. Sorry. That's not funny. You don't need a body in a better place, Patty. How did he go there?
Yeah, so it's at this point that Dennis started associating love with death, he thinks, and they kind of like fused together.
That would make sense, though.
Yeah, trying to understand it, you know. Yeah. And apparently he would go into the sea and simulate drowning. Which is odd, because his grandfather didn't die that way. But
I guess he died at sea, so maybe like Dennis was going to go out fishing. Do we think that he wanted to die of suicide, or he was just trying to...
He was becoming fascinated with death.
Like, maybe trying to get as close to that as possible.
Yeah, without it actually,
Maybe.
So Nielsen claimed that his grandfather's unexpected death and the traumatizing viewing of his corpse led to his later, like, psychopathy. Which
makes sense.
So his mother then went on to remarry and have 4 more children, and this apparently left Nielsen a withdrawn and lonely child. So I think she just kind of had another family, and he was kind of there, but just kind of tagging along.
That's always the worst in a lot of kids. Maybe not back then. Probably not. A lot of kids to push out. I mean, I didn't push any out, but a lot of kids to push out. I can just imagine the pain.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, Emily. Well, give it a few months.
So as like he is getting like to be an older teenager, like during puberty, he discovered that he was homosexual, but he was confused and like shamed by it because obviously there's a big taboo and stigma around it back then. And he tried to keep it hidden from his family and the few friends that he did have. But this is also very strange. Many of the boys he was attracted to had similar facial features to his younger sister Sylvia. So on one occasion, he apparently sexually fondled her, believing his attraction towards boys might be a manifestation of the care he felt for her.
So his logic is, I think I fancy boys because I fancy my sister. Like, I care for you, so I'm going to touch you just to see whether my hypothesis is right. Any sympathy I had is kind of gone now.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It lasts very long.
It's like a weird one, isn't it? So it's like because being gay is seen as such a disgusting thing back then, it can create all these other kind of like sexual perversions, I suppose, because you're so like you think there's something wrong with you. You can like rationalise it.
Why you're being like you're being, or why is it that? Yeah, and I guess a lot of these killers, had they not been shamed for being who they are, perhaps they wouldn't have gone on to kill.
Yeah, exactly. Same with like Dharma, wasn't it? You know, he was gay.
Yeah.
He felt the shame of it, and
that's the thing, because it's the shame, and it's almost like when they kill people, it's always like an act of punishment and like remorse for what they've done. Not for what they've done to that person, but like in terms of their own like sexuality and stuff like that. It's like kind of like punishment and remorseful, like
Yeah. So apparently he made no effort to seek like any sexual contact with anyone his own age or gender. But he later said that he was fondled by an older boy and that he didn't find it unpleasant. So there was also
further cementing the idea.
Yeah. And again with the incest, he also caressed and fondled his older brother as he slept. Apparently. Yeah.
What? So the brother wasn't aware of this until...
Well, his brother did know, apparently, because he was called Olaf Jr. Because he began to suspect that Dennis was homosexual and regularly belittled him in public, referring to him as hen, which is like Scottish slang for girl.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that probably didn't help.
But at the same time, this guy's being molested by his fucking brother. Like, what the hell?
No, yeah, it's such a turn of events. I did not see that coming.
I don't know.
That traumatised you, though. As much as you tried to pretend it didn't, you know, because you're the older sibling and you maybe tried to pretend it didn't happen, that would traumatise you.
Yeah, it would. Yeah. So at 16, he joins the army. He goes into catering and he learns butchery.
Brilliant. Oh, your skills. Yeah, that will come in handy later.
And he was apparently known for being odd, and he was like argumentative for the sake of being argumentative. Apparently, like if he said something was like black and white, he'd be like, no, it's white and black. He just used to like being awkward. Apparently.
Oh my god, I hate people like this.
Yeah. So he knew he was gay, but obviously kept it a secret being in the army because it's not, something you spoke about, especially then. He was deployed to Germany for a while, and his colleagues recalled that he often drank to excess in order to hide his shyness. So, made him more confident. And on one occasion, Nielsen and a German young man drank themselves into unconsciousness, and Nielsen woke on the floor of the German man's flat. So apparently nothing happened between them, but it like fueled his like sexual fantasies. And it became this thing where he wanted his sexual partner to be like a young, slender male, but to be completely passive at the same time. So I think when he saw him unconscious, it just appealed to him.
He's finding out what he likes. Yeah.
Yeah. So his fantasies then like evolved into his partner being unconscious or dead. So it's like taking that other.
That's just like done it, isn't it?
It is, yes. It's
almost wanting a doll to play with.
Yeah. So on several occasions, Nielsen pretended he was inebriated in the hope one of his colleagues would molest his supposedly unconscious body. So he pretended to be drunk and unconscious in the hope that he would get molested.
I guess in his mind it made sense because that's something he's done and he would have probably done again. Or
he just wants it to happen.
Did it? I can't imagine.
I don't think it did. No.
It's a very specific thing to
hope is going to happen. Yeah.
What are the chances that there are two of them at the same severity?
Two molesters. Okay. And so he was deployed to the state of Aden, which is in, I don't know if I'm saying that right, by the way, but it's in Saudi Arabia. And he was apparently kidnapped by an Arab taxi driver. And yeah, Nielsen apparently managed to overpower him and locked the guy in the boot of the car.
Right.
Yeah.
Did they ever say why he was kidnapped? Was it like ransom or?
I don't know. I'm not sure if I have that right. I don't know if it was, I can't quite remember if it was Nielsen who was put in the boot of the car. But I'm pretty sure it was, I'm pretty sure he did overpower the taxi driver and sort of turn around the kidnapping. But either way, it's a bit of a strange one, isn't it? I mean, it's kind of what he's been fantasizing about slightly. But, yeah. And when he was deployed here, he had his own room, which meant that he could basically do whatever he wanted. He could masturbate, fantasize all he wanted. And he imagined sexual encounters with an unconscious body while looking at his own nude body in a mirror.
Well, I mean, I guess you could imagine that your head wasn't there and it was someone else's head.
That's pretty much what he was doing, though. By using a freestanding mirror, he could position it so his head was out of view. And visualise himself engaged in a sexual act with another man.
I mean, that's pretty sick. But also, we can see the building up to where he ended up.
Yeah, he's just figuring out what he wants to do. And he alternatively envisioned himself as being both the domineering and passive partner. So I don't think he minded that much which he was. Sounds of it. There wasn't. It wasn't one or the other, it was either. And these fantasies gradually evolved to incorporate his own near-death experience with the Arab taxi driver.
Right.
And he also became obsessed with this painting, a 19th century oil painting called the Raft of Medusa. And I do have a picture of it, I'll put it on the Instagram. By a guy called Theodore Gericault. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, but that's pretty much
We'll just go with that.
Yeah, and it depicts an old man holding the limp, nude body of a dead young man as he sits next to the dismembered body of another young male. So it's quite a gruesome image.
Wait, say that again.
It depicts an old man holding the limp, nude body of a dead young man as he sits next to the dismembered body of another young male.
Oh, so that could be quite symbolic. It's his granddad holding him. Dead. While there's the remains of someone he killed.
Yeah, but I think it's also just something he kind of wants to reenact as well.
Yeah. Maybe that's where he got the idea from to do what he did. Yeah.
So he starts getting this interest in photography, and he gets his army colleagues to pose as corpses, and they thought it was weird. They were just like, yeah, whatever, go on with it, as you do.
No, thank you. What are you going on with it?
No, I wouldn't. I'd be like, no, mate, you're weird.
Like, go see someone.
Do this. Maybe they just saw it as a joke. I don't know.
I guess if they were dressed and he passed it off as a sort of, it'll be a laugh sort of thing, maybe. Yeah, dead bodies. Ha.
Hilarious.
It happens. People have all sorts of different ideas of what's funny, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
Dead bodies, though.
So after 11 years, he rises to corporal, and apparently he's a bit of a bully. He's got power, and he's a bully with it, which is, I think, understandable with his type of personality. Between October and December 1972, Nielsen lived with his family as he considered his next career move. So he comes out of the army at this point. I think he was just discharged, I guess, after being in there for 11 years, maybe. And apparently he joined his older brother Olaf, who we know they've got a bit of a weird relationship. His sister-in-law and another couple, I don't know how this comes about, but they go somewhere or on television, there's a documentary about homosexuality, which I can't imagine was painting gay people in, the best light at the time. So all of them apparently viewed the topic with disdain, except Dennis, who spoke in defence of gay rights, which obviously being a gay man, he would do. And a fight breaks out between him and his brother, and they never speak again. Yeah, they just don't speak again. And he maintained only sporadic contact with the rest of his family, so he's separated from them. He's never been close, but
That's fair, because you know what they think about you now, so even if he wanted to come out and say, look guys, I'm gay, like, you know that they're going to hate you, and you've heard all these things that they have to say about homosexual people, like, they're probably thinking that he's gay now anyway, so maybe it's their way of being like, if we just
always been like a
things.
black sheep as well, so I think that was just like the final nail in the coffin, really, wasn't it? Yeah. So at this point, he decides to join the police force and move to London in December to begin training for the course. And again, it's to gain control over people. It's like a position of power. And he apparently discovered a fascination with morgue visits and autopsied bodies. So again, his like career choice is leading him to these, you know, like an outlet for all these.
You know, apologies. Access to bodies.
Maybe he wasn't smart enough. Maybe.
Perhaps. Or maybe it's not something you wanted to do, like do autopsies and chop them up like scientifically, I guess, maybe.
Yeah. But after 11 months, he quits. I don't know why, he just does. Not very long.
Probably doesn't want to be on the force while he's going to be doing the crime.
And he became a civil servant, and it's at this point as well that he becomes like disillusioned with the gay scene, because again, a bit like Dharma, it was very like fast relationships, you know, like one night stands a lot of the time, and he wanted like companionship. But he's not like able to make friends very easily, he's not that type of person. And he becomes a bit of an alcoholic to give him the confidence, like Dharma. Like, you know, yeah. He apparently has got a real thing about classical music as well, like would listen intently to it. And I saw a documentary where the guy on it was saying that he kind of thinks he felt more comfortable with machines and people as they were easier to control, which is true, you know. So in 1973, he had his first official brush with the police other than working for them. David Painter claimed that Nielsen had taken pictures of him while he was asleep. I don't know if this was like someone he brought back to his place or he was just like sort of peeping into where he was, but they had a fight. And this guy, David Painter, was hospitalised as a result. So obviously Nielsen was quite able to
overpower him and
defend himself, in this instance anyway. And Nielsen was brought in for questioning about the incident, but was released without charge. Because a lot of the things that used to happen, like back then between people that the police suspected of being gay, it was just put down as like a lover's tiff. It was just like, oh yeah, just deal with it yourself, we're not really that asked.
Yeah, I can't be bothered to deal with it.
Like again, it's like Dharma, isn't it, with that young boy that he managed to get back to his... Yeah. So in 1975, he is living in this place called Cricklewood in London, and this is where he would kill at least 9 men. And he's living in a place called Melrose Avenue, 195 Melrose Avenue, and he's living with his boyfriend, David Garrican. And they're in the bottom flat, and they have like French windows to the garden, and the only ones with access to the garden, none of the other people can get to it other than him. And David leaves him, I think, after about 2 years. Because Nielsen is just like a really overpowering person. Like from what I can gather, he would talk at you rather than have a conversation. You'd never listen to what you're saying. He's that type of person. And this is when his life begins like a real downward spiral into alcohol and loneliness, which culminates in his first murder 18 months later. So he starts like inviting men back, and he wants them to stay. And when they left, it just like reinforces the loneliness that he feels. And his fantasies are just getting more and more morbid. He had a on-off boyfriend called Martin Hunter Craig, and I think this guy's in his life for a period of time, but he never lives with him or anything. And he said that Nielsen would pretend to be dead for hours. Like he'd get there, and Dennis would just like fall on the floor pretending to be dead and like or unconscious. And this Martin guy, but like I knew perfectly well that he wasn't unconscious. I could like literally make a meal around him and turn on the television, and he'd just be lying on the floor with his like arms outstretched. And he just, after a few hours, he'd just come around, and it would be like, that's just something that he did.
So was that so he could get molested? Do you think?
I don't know.
To what purpose?
I don't know, I think it's like the idea of it being a dead body, maybe, but not actually being dead.
Oh, it's so bizarre because obviously quite peaceful. Yeah, but I mean, if he wanted his boyfriend to do something, I guess he would have told him, or was he just challenging him to see what to see if he would do the same, to see if they'd have the same kind of thinking?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. Would he fall asleep at all? Because I would, I think. That sounds so boring. Yeah, if I was only going to go for hours, I would probably just fall asleep.
Apparently he just used to be like get up and be like, oh yeah, hi, I'm okay. That's fuck knows. I don't really know what the guy Martin was. I just don't know why you'd stick around for something like that.
After the first time, I'd be like, see you later, but never.
Yeah, this dude's weird. Not really back there again. And one night, Martin woke up to find Nielsen like stood over him, like straddling him with a knife in his hand. And the gas heater, which apparently is usually fixed to the wall, was like on the floor, and there was smoke coming from it. And he was like, well, what are you doing? He's just like, oh, I don't even know what he's like. How would you explain that? Like, oh, I'm just trying to
wanted to do some redecorating, you know, just didn't like where the gas heater was.
Yeah, so what's he trying to set him on fire? Like, maybe. Like what? Like,
or gas
figure out any way of killing people?
Into unconsciousness, maybe, so he doesn't mind that when and then he can do whatever he wants to do.
Again, like, why would you go back if someone had done that?
She went back after that?
Yeah, it was like they continued being like in a sort of on-off casual relationship until like the day Nielsen was arrested.
I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it does seem like, well, maybe because there wasn't, I don't know what the situation was, but maybe there wasn't many openly gay partners you could find or anything like that. So, or perhaps it just sounds weirder than what it actually was.
Yeah, maybe most of the time he was like they got on really well, and there was just these strange occurrences that he just sort of dismissed as being.
And we are looking through the lens of what he's done as well. So
yeah, we know what he's done.
This guy did it. Like, exactly. Yeah, just a bit of a weirdo, I guess, because he doesn't really
just a bit of anything eccentric.
It's fucked up either way.
It is fucked up. It is fucked up. Again, it goes back to that thing of people being so much more naive back then, and serial killers being able to get away with a lot more than they like. I was reading statistics the other day. There's like way less serial killers about like in the present day than there was back in like the 70s, 60s, 70s, 80s, because people just weren't aware of it. Yeah, they're so much more naive. Yeah,
they didn't want to ask. They didn't want to offend or any. No, but our generation is the problem. Yeah, right. At least we don't let serial killers run around. At least we lock our doors. Yeah. So.
Although we do post our running routes on the social media, which is a really great idea.
I don't run, so.
I don't know.
To be fair,
I've got a treadmill, so fuck that.
So your route's going to be just like a dot. At least you know outside anyway. It's like, we do check in to bars, pubs, cinemas, or whatever. It's so much easier to follow people.
Will thinks I'm mental because I go for
There you go.
I said, Will thinks I'm mad because when I go out for a walk down the country lanes, I'll take like a pair of scissors with me just in case.
I mean, that's fair. Are you alone? Although, you could get possession of a weapon. That is
there's no police around here.
That's a sharp object. But what if you go into like an art class? Like scissors. Why are you taking my scissors?
I'm literally just walking down the country lane and coming back home.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying.
It's not going anywhere.
No, because the other day I wanted to borrow some scissors from my friend, and she has like proper like hairdressing scissors, and she was going to give them to me, and I was like, oh, I don't want to walk around with them because that's a weapon, and they could get me done for that. But yeah, no.
I just think to myself, I'm going down a country lane because that is literally all there is around here, and I've got like my 2-year-old with me. I don't. If someone was to attack, there's no one's going to hear what's going on, and I'm not going to be able to defend myself. So just in case, you know.
And it has happened, and
I know. I think that's illegal, though, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I don't think that's illegal. Just have some pepper. Or even like hairspray into their eyes, and that would pretty sting. Like it sting. It will be useful if some sort of like defensive weapons were allowed. Some flora. Gorilla glue. Yeah,
there is. I was looking. Just one of the random things I do. I was looking at you can't have like pepper spray, but there is a certain type of spray that you can have because doormen have it as part of their like kit if they need it, and that's legal.
You should definitely get something like that as well, so then you can spray them and then stab. We're talking about people that attack Emily, not that Emily's going to attack people.
Not going to go out and purposely look for stuff.
What did you say? Just in case. I can't think about now. Just stop my drink out because Joyce is everywhere.
Anyway, let's get back on topic.
Yes. Reel that in.
Back on topic. So in December 1978, his first victim is an Irish boy called Stephen Holmes, or Holmes, however you want to say, and he's 14 years old, and he's walking home from a concert.
So how old is Dennis at this point?
30s.
Okay.
30s. I can't. Well, he was born 1940 something, wasn't he?
Yeah.
I can't remember. I'm shit with numbers. I can't remember. What is numbers? And he invites him home, and the next morning he's overcome by a desire to prevent him from leaving. So he strangles him with a tie and drowns him in a bucket of water.
Oh, drowning again.
Yeah, and it's just a time, isn't it? Like 14 years old, like walking home from a concert on his own in London. Like,
yeah, it doesn't really happen now. No.
Especially being Irish as well, back in the 70s, they were really not like welcomed.
Not welcomed. Yeah.
No. So that in itself is quite dangerous, you know, but yeah. So he took the corpse to the bathroom to wash it, then he placed it back in his bed, later saying he found it to be beautiful. So that's like again like Dharma, isn't it? Like what looking at the body, seeing it as like beautiful.
They would have been great pals.
They would have, wouldn't they?
Yeah. They could have really got on. They both wanted someone to stick around. They could have just stuck around for each other.
Pretending to be dead for each other.
Just dropped to the floor for hours.
Yeah, he's not Dharma's type though, is he?
No, but you know, you've got to work with what you've got. Well, they don't have to. They can just pick and choose, I guess. Well, that's the problem.
Yeah. So he also apparently attempted to have sex with the corpse unsuccessfully. So I don't really know. I just guess he couldn't do it. I don't really want to think about that.
Even he just didn't want to. Like,
I think he couldn't.
Tried it.
Yeah, I think he couldn't do it. Yeah, but he spent the night sleeping next to the body in his bed. And he finally hid the corpse under his floorboards for 8 months before removing it and burning the decaying remains in his back garden. So another close call with the police was in October 1979, when a young student accused Nielsen of trying to strangle him during a bondage play session. Despite the student's claims, no charges were pressed against Nielsen, as again, the police were homophobic, weren't they? So they were like, not...
And I guess they were thinking, well, you were already there, so it's consensual, whatever happens.
Yeah, you're into bondage, so whatever happens is your problem, really. And in December 1979, he met a Canadian tourist called Kenneth Ockenden, who was 23, at a pub. And following a day of sightseeing and drinking, I think Nielsen used to sort of, I don't know, be able to turn on the charm when he needed to and kind of just, like, you know, become friends with this person for a day. So they went around London together.
I guess for a short period of time, he could pretend, or he was reasonably normal.
Yeah. And the day ended at Nielsen's apartment. Again, he didn't want him to leave, so he strangled Ockenden to death with an electric cable, cleaned up the corpse like before, and shared the bed with it overnight. Just imagine sharing your bed with a corpse. Like, how fucked up is that? Just everything about it's fucked up, but that is just like, what?
It's just a bit creepy. It is. Yeah. It's actually a bit more than creepy. It's just weird. Just get a mannequin.
Well, yeah. Dharma did that though, and it just still escalated, and it wasn't satisfied. Yeah. So he took photos. Yeah, he took photos, and this time he did actually have sex with the corpse, so he was able to get over that this time. And he hid the corpse under floorboards, which he removed frequently and engaged in conversation as if Ockenden was still alive. And he sat him in a chair, and they watched. They watched TV together as well.
But he would be like falling apart after.
Your body bloats and like
it just smells
like, really quickly, doesn't it? Yeah. Like really quickly. I don't think it's quite surprising how quickly your body does blow after you've died.
All the gases. Oh, disgusting. Sorry.
Yeah, and it's another name that he was given as well. Like, he was dubbed the kindly killer because he like, it's almost like a name he gave himself as well. Like, he thought he was being kind because he was like doing all these rituals, like washing them and talking to them, and he thought it was like almost like humane.
After they're dead.
I know. But it's almost like he's even before dead, because he like the way he used to talk at people. It's almost like it's not that different to him.
Yeah.
Like, they can't talk back now. That's the main difference.
Easy part, yeah. That's true. Best part, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. So by May 1980, his third victim, 5 months later, was Martin Duffy, who was a homeless 16-year-old, and he invited him to spend the night. And as with the other victims, he strangled, then drowned him, brought him to bed, and this time masturbated over the corpse. And he kept his body in a wardrobe for 2 weeks before joining Ockenden under the floorboards. So he's already got the body under the floorboards, and he's put some Duffy in with him as well. Yeah.
Again, what about the smell of the neighbours, right?
Yeah. I suppose being on the first floor would it be easier, or would the smell be...
But wouldn't it travel up?
Right, yeah, rising.
You would have to like air it out properly all the time. I wouldn't be able to have heating on. No.
No, unless it's May as well, so it's not like cold, is it?
No.
I don't know. So his next victim was a prostitute called Billy Sutherland, who was 27. He strangled him as well. In September 1981, he had another, who was 24-year-old Malcolm Barlow, who, this is really sad, was an orphan with learning disabilities and mental health issues. So he's a very vulnerable person as it was. So after Nielsen found him complaining of feeling unwell from epilepsy, I think he was like out on the streets or something, or in a pub, Nielsen took him home and called him an ambulance, which then took him to hospital. When Barlow was released, he came back and sat on Nielsen's doorstep to await his return from work to say thank you. And Nielsen invited him in. They drank rum together, and Barlow fell asleep. And basically, I think because of his learning difficulties and his mental health and stuff, Nielsen found him to be a nuisance, so he strangled him. Yeah.
Oh no.
I don't think he found this guy like to his liking, I guess. Because he just literally strangled him. He didn't want to kill him in the first place because he did actually find him, phone him an ambulance, and they took him away.
But he came back, so just to get rid of, in case he comes back again.
Yeah. So Nielsen was forced to stuff him under the kitchen sink because obviously he's running out of space. He's only like a small flat. So he's got half a dozen bodies hidden around his apartment at this point.
Oh, the smell! Where's the smell going? I don't understand. How is that? That boyfriend is not noticing Marcus. Is that his name? I'm not noticing.
Yeah.
And what about the boyfriend?
Yeah, in the documentary I was watching, this Martin guy was on it, and he was chatting, and he was saying, there was like a weird smell, but it wasn't something that would be bad enough for you to pick up on. Like, you just sort of thought it was damp on you or something. And I suppose if you don't know
what a dead body
smell like, you're not looking for it, are you?
Give it time and you get used to it as well, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh.
Apparently he'd spray the flat twice a day to get rid of the flies, which were hatching from the decomposing bodies.
Oh yeah. Oh my god, yeah.
It's not even just the smell; it's like the vermin it attracts as well, isn't
Oh,
it?
that's so dirty.
Yeah.
So the neighbours complained about problems. He's got bodies hidden in the house. But...
So neighbours eventually started complaining about the smell, like as you would.
Time.
Yeah, but he convinced them that it came from structural problems with the building, so like damp and the fact it's an old building.
I think he's know what damp smells like.
Yeah, but it's the same with Dharma. Like he convinced his neighbours, oh, it's just like a broken fish tank or like the plumbing.
Bad meat
People just
in the fridge. Again, I guess you wouldn't suspect it to be dead bodies. Yeah.
I would. I'd be like,
well, yeah, no, I would. But we're normal, Emily. Yeah. We're on it.
So he obviously then thinks, I really need to get rid of these bodies.
About time.
Yeah, about time. This is another thing with him. He doesn't like the dead bodies once, they've gone past what he wants from them.
Certain point,
yeah, he doesn't like the gore and stuff. Apparently he'd have to get drunk to dismember them and, cut them up. So he'd remove his clothes and dismember them on the stone kitchen floor with a large kitchen knife. And obviously the butchery he learnt, I guess, came in handy with this.
Yeah, how to cut it to make it easier.
Yeah, he boiled the skulls to remove the flesh, organs, and the organs and viscera in plastic bags for disposal. So is he just putting them out with the rubbish?
I guess. Well, where else is he putting them though?
Yeah, so he buried limbs in the garden and in the shed and stuffed torsos into suitcases until he could burn the remains in a bonfire at the end of his garden. And apparently on occasion he had fires burning all day, and he'd put a tyre on the bonfire to disguise the smell. And this bit's fucked up. He'd have the local children would come into the garden and dance and play around the fire.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Right.
So fucked up.
What a great man.
Jesus Christ. Yeah.
I guess anything to make it seem like it's just normal though.
Yeah, he's just a normal guy. Yeah.
Like you wouldn't be like, no, your kids can't come and play around the big bonfire, because then people would be like, well, why can't they?
Or
not for health and safety reasons. So why can't they?
Some bodies.
They might see a skull.
That's not funny. It's enough. So he crushed the bones once the fire had died down, and police apparently found thousands of bone fragments in the garden, later on when they did their forensic examinations. It's like Dharma. Going back to Dharma again, he crushed the bones up and chucked them out into the forest, didn't he? Just flung them around.
Again, how did he do all that without anyone seeing, hearing, suspecting anything? It's London though. People mind their own business. Yeah. True, you don't want to interact with your neighbours, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah. But it's weird. Do you not question, why do you have a fire burning all day?
All the time. What? Yeah.
Why?
God knows.
Well, no, you don't complain. What the hell are you doing? Do you want to burn us all up? I don't know.
Strange. So he invites this guy called Douglas Stewart back to his place, who's a barman, and he awoke in his flat to find his ankles bound and Nielsen strangling him. And he successfully overpowered Nielsen, to which Nielsen shouted, "Take my money," in the hope to be overheard by the other tenants to cover his back. So he's thinking on his feet, Yeah. And the Stewart reported the attack to the police, who apparently questioned Nielsen. And because there was conflicting accounts given by both men, which obviously there fucking would be, because one's just tried to kill the other, not going to tell the truth, is he?
Yeah.
Police dismissed the incident as a lover's quarrel.
Oh, lover's quarrel. Doesn't matter that they didn't really know each other. But even so, even if they were lovers and they were quarreling, well, he's telling you, he tried to kill him. How is that okay?
I know. It's so weird, isn't it? What the fuck were the police doing back then?
Not a lot. Were they not bruising it? Didn't say anything. But I suppose they were just homophobic, weren't they? Though it wasn't their problem. They didn't care.
It's you're gay, so it's your problem.
Yeah, we don't want anything to do with this.
No. It's just so awful.
Yeah.
So he has another victim called Billy Sutherland, who's 26 and he's a divorcee from Edinburgh looking for work in London. And he had a girlfriend and a 3-year-old son. So this guy, I believe, wasn't gay. He was just a drinking companion, He agreed to drink with Nielsen, and Nielsen killed him that night. And the family didn't learn of his fate until 1983, where parts of his body was found on the floorboards, and he was identified by his false teeth. It's just so sad, leaving a child behind as well, no one knowing what's happened to you. Just disappear.
They were like, oh, he just ran off because he didn't want to.
Yeah, all sorts of things going through people's head, yeah. So, apparently, in an attempt to stifle his homicidal behaviour, Nielsen moved to a top-floor apartment at 23 Cranley Gardens in Muswell Hill, North London. So, this place has, no convenient floorboards and no garden for him to access. So, I kind of think in his head, he is almost trying to force himself into stopping. Because there's no, he didn't need to take a top-floor apartment. If he was wanting somewhere he could, easily just, dispose of bodies, he wouldn't be choosing that place, would he?
Yeah, but I guess he's not trying too hard because he is not confessing to the police. So
exactly, yeah.
It's just a feeble attempt, I guess, because
it is, yeah. So, unable to quell his impulses, a further 3 victims were killed in his apartment. One, John Howlett, Archibald Graham Allen, and Stephen Sinclair. So obviously he had to get rid of the bodies, and this place was a lot more difficult to do that. He overcame this by boiling the head, feet, and hands, and dissecting the bodies into small pieces that could be flushed down the toilet and dispose of them in plastic bags. Yeah. So another victim, Paul Nobbs, who was 19 and a student, Nielsen plied him with alcohol, and he woke the next morning with a deep cut across his throat and bruises. And Nielsen advised him to go and see a doctor because someone had tried to strangle him.
Yeah, someone.
Yeah, it's like getting cocky this time.
Yeah,
It's like
someone,
getting cocky with it, isn't it?
someone in my apartment tried to strangle you. You figure it out. I don't know. It wasn't me though. Wasn't me. Just wait a second.
Yeah.
Oh. Are we closing the door? Is George coming back? Sorry.
And interlude. Yeah. So this poor guy didn't report it. I think he was afraid to because of the stigma you'd get from the police. You'd almost be like, what's a lost cause to begin with, isn't it?
Well, they wouldn't do anything anyway. Oh, it's so
Exactly.
sad. It's so sad.
Yeah. So in May 1982, it's a guy called Carl Stotter, and I've seen this guy on like a number of documentaries over the years that they've done about Dennis Nilsen. This guy, it's just so sad. Like as time progresses, you can see the like how much it's affected this guy, and he's just like descending further and further and further into like just depression. And he did, I believe, die of alcoholism in the end. So he's a 21-year-old gay man who Nielsen met at a pub in Camden, and they engaged in conversation. And Nielsen discovers that Stotter was depressed following a failed abusive relationship. So he's kind of like run away from this like awful relationship. And I believe he was like he's quite a like confident guy. He was a drag queen, I believe. So you have to be quite confident.
You have to be very confident to be a drag queen.
Yeah. So he's quite a fun person. And Nielsen got him drunk and invited him back to his flat, assuring him he had no intention of like anything sexual. It's just for like conversation and stuff. Stotter consumed more alcohol before falling asleep on an open sleeping bag, which Nielsen apparently warned him about. He was saying like, oh, just be careful because you might get like entangled.
What, strangled? By the sleeping bag?
Yeah.
Just in case, you wake up with a slash across your throat. It was the sleeping bag, not me.
Stotter woke to find himself being strangled, with Nielsen loudly whispering, "Stay still."
That's creepy. I don't like that.
And at trial, apparently, Stotter said he initially believed Nielsen was trying to free him from the zip of the sleeping bag before he returned to a state of unconsciousness.
Well, I guess you would though, wouldn't you? Because he just told you to look out for the sleeping bag.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't think, oh, this guy's trying to kill me. And you just walk out so you don't really know what's going on.
Yeah. And he vaguely recalled hearing water running before realising Nielsen was trying to drown him. He apparently briefly managed to raise his head above the water and gasped the words, "No more, please, no more." It's just like this guy, like he went to like psychiatrists after all this had happened because it was from your abusive relationship. It's just you like manifesting like fantasies.
We lost internet. Yeah, you have to repeat from. We heard from. You went to the psychiatrist. So repeat from that. Sorry, we were like.
But yeah, Carl Stotter, like years after this had happened, he had like PTSD and he went to a psychiatrist. Like, I think he went to a number of psychiatrists, and they basically told him like these things didn't actually happen. No one tried to murder you. It's just your like brain creating like a fantasy from your abusive relationship. So for years he like had like suppressed these memories, and they gave him like medication, which apparently like pretty much wiped his memory for months at a time. So he didn't remember what had happened. So he, he was really psychologically damaged by it, like completely.
Oh my god! So instead of dealing with what happened to him, they just sort of
it's really sad. So Nielsen believed at the time that Stotter was dead, and he sat him in his armchair as he did with like bodies. But his dog, who was named Bleep, began licking Stotter's face. So Nielsen realised he wasn't dead, and he immediately started rubbing Stotter's limbs and heart to increase his circulation. And he covered his body in blankets and lay him on his bed. So he's like reviving him and stuff, like really strange.
What?
It's like he's always getting off on being like the saviour as well. Like how I thought I've killed him, I'm also bringing you back. Like I'm pretty much like a god, almost like a god complex, isn't it? When Stotter regained consciousness, Nielsen embraced him and explained he'd almost strangled himself on the zip of the sleeping bag, and that he had resuscitated him.
That's lighting at its finest.
Yeah, exactly. And over the following 2 days, Stotter repeatedly lapsed in and out of consciousness. So although he's like saving him, he's not like taking him to a hospital or anything. It's just, even if he just dumped him at a hospital, just
anything really. Like, that's like torture.
So when he regained enough strength to question Nielsen, he explained he'd become caught in the zip of the sleeping bag and that he placed him in cold water because he was in shock, which is a strange thing to do to someone who's in shock. But yeah.
Why didn't you call an ambulance? Well, yeah.
And yeah, so Nielsen then took him to a nearby railway station, to get out the tube, and apparently he took him on a detour through some like woods. And Stotter was saying that he at one point looked behind him, and Nielsen was really close to him, more closer than he expected him to be, looking at him like a really weird way. And there was a guy like walking his dog in these woods, and he stopped and apparently stared at them both, like, what the fuck is going on? So I think Nielsen at this point was also toying with the idea of like getting rid of him again, like killing him.
Oh, yeah,
Because there was this dog walker, he changed his mind.
Oh my god.
I need to have a drink. My throat's going dry.
That's alright. That is lucky.
Yeah, so it kind of like saved him.
I mean, lucky, but also unlucky. Yeah, but also unlucky because his life after that, from what he said, it's just been horrible.
His life, yeah. He has said that he wished that he was just killed there because it just ruined his life completely.
And like psychiatrists not believing him and not helping him at all, and it's just torturing him basically because not believing him.
But he did go to the hospital, and apparently the doctor said to him, "Oh, looks like someone has actually tried to kill you." Like straight up said that to him, and he was just like, "No, it can't be," because he saved him. You know, why would this person have tried to kill you if he then saved you? You know. So this happened to 3 more men, and the police just weren't interested. Each time they just said it was a bondage game gone wrong, and
what was the same person? Like,
yeah, exactly. I don't think they're even like taking names or notes, so that they don't even remember that this name is being mentioned. It's just, you know,
they can't cross-reference. Again, the police at its finest.
Yeah, so the penultimate victim was Graham Allen, 27. He was hailing a taxi when Nielsen offered him dinner, and he later said he had the full intention of murdering him. So he strangled and left his body in the bar for 3 days before chopping it up. So Nielsen basically was like, I'm definitely going to kill this person. Like, there was no question about it, apparently, in Nielsen's head. Just like leaving a body in a bar for 3 days as well.
Where does it shower?
Fuck knows. I think it's a big list of like priorities for him.
Yeah, I mean, it probably was on the top of the list.
He's sharing a flat with his body, so...
Yeah, okay, maybe hygiene wasn't his, like, best quality. But did he, with that body, did he sleep with it as well? Or just left it in the bar?
Just left it in the bar.
That's really different. Like, that's just killing for... Like, not even to fulfill whatever sick need he has. It's just killing a person for the joy of
it's just getting to that point now.
Yeah.
It does do this, doesn't it, though, with these like serial killers? It just gets to the point where they're just killing.
It's just not enough, really, is it, anymore? Because the fear's not there. It's like, you know, it's same old, really, I guess. And I guess they become really deluded as to, I can decide to take this person's life now. You know, I can choose who lives and who dies.
Yeah. So Nielsen informed his employers he was ill on the 9th of October. And this was probably because he was dissecting Alan's body. So he didn't go to work because of that reason. In February 1983, there was complaints about blocked drains in the apartments where they lived. And human remains were found in the pipes.
Of course they were.
So there were 5 other tenants at Cranley Gardens, and apparently none of them knew Nielsen very well, like he did keep himself to himself. One of them called out drain specialist Dynarod to investigate a drain blockage. And in the presence of the tenants, including Nielsen, the technician discovered rotting remains of some sort. So he wasn't sure what it was. I believe he said it looked like just something like a butcher had prepared. Like he didn't think, oh, it's human, because he just wouldn't really, would he?
No, it's just some sort of meat on a bone or something.
Yeah. And apparently Nielsen tried to cover his tracks. So he tried to remove the human tissue from the drains that night. But he was spotted by a downstairs tenant who became suspicious.
Oh.
Because he would. Like, what's he doing?
I thought you were saying he told everyone who was listening. Like, it wasn't me. I didn't drop the meat down. I don't eat meat.
So it's reported that on the morning of February 9th, 1983, Nielsen joked to a work colleague, if I'm not in tomorrow, I'm either ill, dead, or in jail. So it's like he kind of knew.
Yeah, it was coming.
Almost.
Yeah. How does that people, though? Well, I guess he, you know, if he knew the police, they're coming, they would find out it's him, I guess. I don't know, but I don't know if I'd still tell people, even if I knew the police were coming. Maybe he just couldn't help himself. Yeah.
Bragging almost, maybe?
Yeah.
I mean, serial killers don't think normally, do they?
They don't.
No. So Detective Peter J. knocked on Nielsen's door, and he said, we've come about your drains. And apparently Nielsen smirked and said, since when have the police been interested in blocked drains? The detective was like, yeah, the detective was like,
there's dead bodies in there.
Yeah, right. So entering the apartment, Jay noticed a foul odour. And he was like someone who obviously knows what a dead body smells like, and he was just like, this is not good.
So we've got a person, yeah. What sort of cologne are you using?
So I've heard different things. So this is saying he asked Nielsen what it was. And I also saw in a documentary that this Peter J was himself talking. He was like said to him, "Where's the body? Where's the rest of the body?" So which either way that happened, Nielsen calmly confessed that what they were looking for was stored in bags around the apartment, which included 2 dismembered heads and other larger body parts. So obviously more than one body. A head was found in a wardrobe, and legs and pelvis in the bathroom, and there was a head in a box. So they drove to the station, and they asked, is there more than 2 bodies? And he was like, yeah, there's more like 16. But he just was like, what? And he also, yeah, I think they did, because the way he was saying it, he was just so like
nonchalant,
calm. Like it wasn't like he was in panic. He was just like almost confessing, like, oh, it's just done. This is what I've done.
What's the point? They're gonna find them.
Yeah, exactly. And Nielsen said, if I hadn't been caught, I wouldn't have stopped.
I mean, at least he's honest.
So yeah, rather than it being 16, he was something like, oh, if you hadn't have stopped me, it would have been like 150 in like a year's time or whatever.
Why would you hide them though? If you don't have space.
Yeah, it's all fantasy, isn't it?
Yeah.
He just would have kept going, so he literally just got caught like he did.
Yeah.
And if he hadn't got caught, then he would have carried on.
And then he would eventually get caught because, again, he ran out of space.
Yeah. So he also admitted to the attempted murder of 7 others, but he could only name 4 of them. And apparently at no point did he show any remorse and appeared eager to assist the police, even taking them to his old address to point out specific disposal details. So Nielsen was held at Brixton Prison, and whilst there he wrote over 50 notebooks of his memories to assist the prosecution, so he was like prolifically writing about it. It was all just coming out. He also drew what he said. Yeah, I think he liked the attention as well. He felt
infamous, so he might as well to be.
Yeah. And he also drew what he referred to as sad sketches, which detailed his treatment of the victims. So, like, he knew it was wrong and upsetting, but yeah, I don't know, it's really weird.
Just did it anyway.
Yeah, and he apparently showed no remorse, as we said, but he was concerned about the public's attitude towards him. So what, like what people thought. It's like, what do you think people think? Like,
what do you think it was? Yeah, but do you think it was because he was gay, so he was like, I don't want people to think that all gay people are like me?
Maybe.
Yeah, that's a good word. He could have maybe just didn't want people to just class all gay people as murderers, or further damage there. Yeah, I was thinking more in the lines of, I want them to admire me, not hate me, sort of thing. But yeah, yours. I don't know, is it giving him full, like, he was really for gay rights and stuff like that. So
yeah. But then is it giving him too much credit that he thought that way? I don't know.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I guess if he didn't explain what he meant, then we can interpret it the way we want to, or there's so many different ways to do so.
So his trial began October 24th, 1983, and he was charged with 6 counts of murder and 2 charges of attempted murder. And he pleaded not guilty to all charges, citing diminished responsibility due to mental defect.
Oh, gosh.
Even though he'd gone, I've killed 16 people, but also I'm not guilty because of my mental defect.
Yeah.
Well, no, you can't be classed as insane because you've gone through some pretty lengthy processes to hide what you're doing. You know it's wrong. Yeah. So the prosecution relied primarily on extensive interview notes, which took over 4 hours to read verbatim to the jury, as well as the testimony of 3 victims, Paul Nobbs, Douglas Stewart and Carl Stotter. And Carl Stotter, again, he was literally ripped apart by the media at the time. So he'd gone from thinking that, being convinced that all these things he was remembering weren't real, to then having the police come to him and go, yeah, this did actually happen. So then he basically had a bit of a mental breakdown.
As you would.
And on the day of going to court, he just felt so, ill, and at the thought of having to face the person who tried to kill him, that he was apparently really pale. And his mother had said to him, why don't you just put on a little bit of makeup? So he put on a bit of foundation, and the press picked up on it, and they literally just tore him apart in the papers. It was awful. He was getting death threats. People were saying he deserved what happened to him. It ruined his life. Ruined his life.
Awful. That is disgusting.
Yeah. And he wouldn't leave his house at dark, and he's saying, I'm a gay man, but I'm afraid of men, so what do I do about that? What is my life if that's... and I saw a couple of interviews with him, and one of them he was quite coherent, and one which was maybe about 10 years later, quite clearly under the influence of alcohol whilst being interviewed, and it just ruined his life. And I think he did drink himself to death in the end.
Yeah.
Really sad, really sad.
That is really sad.
So even though Nielsen didn't actually kill him, he did in a roundabout way kill him.
He killed his life. And not only him, it's the press, it's everything else that followed it. And it's, instead of getting help, he got shit. And then,
he got shit. Just shit. So physical evidence at the trial was the photographs of the murder scenes, the chopping board used to dissect the victims, and a cooking pot used to boil the skulls, feet and hands. the prosecution called Dr. Paul Bowden, who had spent considerable time with Nielsen. He stated that he was manipulative, with some signs of mental abnormality, but nevertheless still conscious of and responsible for his actions.
Yeah.
So he was convicted of 7 murders and sentenced to 25 years. What? 25 years? What?
Was it 25 years to life? Or just 25?
No, 25 years. And then in 1994, it was ordered he should never be released.
Yeah, makes sense.
But I just don't understand why he didn't get life to begin with. Like, all the things he did.
Maybe they didn't have that. Maybe the highest is 25. I don't think it is life.
No.
You get 25 to life. Yeah, but I feel like 15 to life. Was he tried in Scotland? No, London. Oh, right. Okay.
No, London. Yeah. I don't know. The justice system is an odd one.
What the fuck?
Fuck knows. Because it's not like they didn't have the evidence. When he found it all over his flat.
Yeah, he got test.
Yeah, wrote it all down. Yeah.
And he was only convicted of 7. It
7.
depends like what the judge took into account while sentencing.
Yeah.
That's disgusting.
I suppose maybe if they didn't find the remains of some of them, like he said he killed 16, but if they didn't find all 16 bodies.
Yeah, they could have proven, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, at least he was put away.
Yeah.
So he wrote a secret autobiography apparently while he was in prison, and he said, "I deserve to experience the same degree of pain suffered by my victims."
I might be doing.
I personally think is him trying to get the public on his side almost.
Yeah.
But I at the same time believe that he was full of shit, and he just was writing these things for his own popularity, and he didn't have any remorse for what he did.
Yeah, sounds about right.
So he died in 2018 after stomach pains and was rushed to hospital, and he was 72 years old when he died.
Oh, so old. Fucker. Can't believe he lived to 72. And only, 3 years ago? That's not long ago.
Yeah.
Well, justice was not done then, I guess. He lived to such an old age. It's not fair.
It's just shit, isn't it? When like people like this live to these ages, and you've got people that have never done anything wrong in their lives, and they die at 20 of cancer or something.
Yeah.
It's shit. Yeah. So there we are. There we have Dennis Nilsen's story. Pretty grim. But...
Yeah. I never realised how comparable it is to Dana. It's just so.
Just take out the cannibalism. It's pretty much the same kind of story.
It's the same person, yeah. And getting away with it a little bit as well. The police was there. And I think that's because they're unassuming people as well. Like Jerry, you'd look at them and you wouldn't they're just kind of blend in with the crowd. They're not really they don't stand out. They're not I guess they don't have the look of someone.
No. Because if you were a textbook looking serial killer, no one's going to go with you. No one's going to go back to your house.
Maybe that's how
to get away with it.
Because they can't.
Jeffrey Dahmer wasn't a bad looking guy, and that's why he was so successful. And Dennis Nilsen wasn't exactly attractive, but he wasn't ugly. He wasn't he wasn't disgusting.
Yeah. And these people know how to get their victims back. They know exactly what to say, even if that's not who they are in real life. They know what to say, even if it's a bit longer. Yeah. They're not stupid. They are, but they know what they're almost doing, you know?
Yeah. So I think he was born a bit strange. I think there was some sort of defect there with him, and I just think the things that happened early on in his life triggered that even more. He just became a monster.
Yeah, especially seeing his grandpa dead without being prepared to do so. I feel like that was the point where you can be like, yeah, this is where it started, sort of thing.
Yeah. And I would recommend the David Tennant drama, Des. That's very good.
He looks so much like him.
Yeah, they're both Scottish as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they are.
Yeah. But no, that was very good. I did watch that.
I love David Tennant. I mean, if you are against smoking, you might not want to watch it because they're having some complaints, but other than that,
Smoking?
Have you not seen this? When he first came out, I think there were several complaints about to Ofcom about his excessive smoking.
Yeah, but yes, that's the worst thing that happened.
Yeah, exactly. Also, back then, that's what people did.
Yeah, people would smoke all the time. You could smoke in pubs, you could smoke everywhere, restaurants. It was just normal. I'm old enough to remember people smoking in pubs.
Yeah, I feel like that's not the big issue at hand here, is it?
People are so fucking dumb. What is wrong with people?
Yeah, so you murdered 60 people. Oh, my God, smoking! Too much smoking!
There was something, I can't remember what it was now, that's really annoying, but there was something similar that had complaints, and it's that's not really the thing we should be focusing on here, guys. What?
People just love to complain about the wrong... It's just thing. And petty things as well, someone's dress, because it might be slightly more revealing that you would want to wear yourself, but that's not a thing to complain. Yeah, how about you mind your own damn business and don't bother watching other people? Turn it off if you don't want to watch it. I'm sorry, you don't live my life, so... Yeah, it's just so laughable. Complain. Yeah, it really is. But that was really well done, though. Yeah, it's very...
Thank you.
Yeah,
thanks, Yoko, for my vibe. I think I do those songs.
You do all of them well. But
thanks. So do you guys.
I know. Yeah,
we're professionals.
We are professionals now. We are. We claim to be now. Yeah. We've had badges. We've had 5 months practice. What have we had? I don't know. It's September, isn't it? Pardon?
How long have we actually been doing this now?
Since September. So, actually since August. Yeah, but we released the first episode in September. Yeah. God, Thanks for listening, guys. Thanks for sticking with us.
Yeah, thank you. We'll post loads of stuff on Instagram and such. Little facts for you to read. That painting as well, I'll put that up on there.
Yes, and yeah, I'll do the same with the video.
Yeah, video.
Yeah, we're going to have a YouTube channel, which we mentioned. Woo! Which is Saturday, because we're recording it on Friday.
Is it
But
live
this
now?
episode won't be released till Sunday, so yesterday, technically. Oh yeah, that's true. So yesterday. We'll have it yesterday. The first episode was released yesterday. Will be. Or was.
Yeah. When is
So I'm
the
talking in the
YouTube
future.
like stuff? When is the YouTube videos happening? When's the YouTube live, or is that already live?
No, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. Okay.
Yes, it's because
Cool.
it took me forever to download those videos, so
Yeah.
I'll finish editing them and I'll pop them on. And this one I'll edit and do hopefully on Sunday, if not Monday.
Okay. Cool.
I'll let you know. All of you.
I'll take a picture for the.
What? Oh, wait, what?
For the Instagram.
Oh, I wasn't there. I just wanted to
Quite
say
nice. That was nice.
How did you like my video I sent? Oh yeah, shall we finish it? Shall we just wrap up there?
We'll wrap it up. Yeah. Tape it off a bit there, didn't we? Right, guys.
Yes.
So thank you for listening. Yeah, thank you guys for listening, and thanks everybody who will listen. Hopefully.
Yes.
So it's bye from me.
Goodbye from Patty. Yes. Bye. See you later. Bye. 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 All right, I'm gonna stop recording.